Did you know that the happiest demographic of people is women over 30 without children who aren't married that live alone? Welcome back to part 2 of things I learned from my feminist mother. You do not need to get married. My mother was born in 1952. For the first 22 years of her life, women were not allowed to have their own bank accounts or credit cards. This changed in 1974, thanks to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. When I was a little girl, I was obsessed with Disney and the idea that somewhere out there was a prince who was coming to rescue me. Each and every time I would bring up this fantasy, my mother would quietly and gently remind me, "Sweetie, it's okay if you never get married." She told me that marriage was not all it was cracked up to be, and that happily ever after was more often an image that people painted rather than a reality. And now, thanks to that lesson, I fall into the demographic of the happiest people on the planet.
Oh, what a shock.
I am 35 years old. I live alone. I am not married, nor have I ever been married, and I don't have any children. It's pretty fantastic.
Shocking. Oh, yeah, really. You're exuding happiness.
It's funny when people reference ladies
all right, pause it for a second.
30.
Maybe, see, the Prince Charming never came for you because your hairstyle, you look like a My Little Pony. So that maybe if you hadn't done that, then you would have had the Prince Charming. Can you imagine this? I didn't want to make fun of her really because it's like she had no chance in life when you got a mom. When you're a little girl and you're watching the princess, movies, as all little girls, like my own 3-year-old daughter is going through the phase right now that in my experience can last for like 3 years where she only wears princess. I have not seen her wear anything but a princess costume for the last 4.5 weeks. She wears it to bed. She wears it. She will not wear anything else. But can you imagine going up to a little girl, watching the princess, is into the princess thing, and then saying, that's not real. You won't be happily ever after. In fact, little child, you'll be better off living alone and dying alone. That's what would be good for you. So she claims that the happiest demographic are middle-aged, single women who live alone are the happiest. I guess this is one of those, what's the source? Trust me, bro. I guess this is one of those situations because it's hard enough to measure happiness. And so anytime you hear a new study indicates this or that about happiness, who's happy, who's not happy, it's just like, it's impossible to actually measure that scientifically, especially across entire demographics. What's the level of happiness in this demographic? It's not possible to actually do that in the first place. I mean, the only way you can even begin to measure happiness is to interview, ask people, survey people, and say, "Are you happy with this?"
Survey says,
It tells you what people will say about their happiness. And so, if this is true, I don't know which study she's based. Let's just pretend she's basing it on some study that found that single, middle-aged women without children who live alone are the happiest. Let's pretend there's some study that says that, and probably there is, because the study says anything. What that tells you is that single, middle-aged women without kids who live alone are the most likely to tell you when you survey them that they are happy. But that doesn't mean that they actually are. And in fact, in this case, we're pretty sure that it doesn't because they have a vested interest in insisting that they are happy. They want you to think that they're happy because they don't want to publicly confront their own unhappiness. And it isn't, this is where we don't need a study. We can use our own common sense and our own understanding of human nature to know that it is very, very rare to find. Like I say, it's impossible. There's all there are some people who have a vocation where they're called to be hermits living in the woods somewhere, writing the next great American novel. I don't know, like those kinds of people exist. But for most people, happiness is shared. It is something that we find in our relationships, and especially our relationships with our families. That's how we're human beings. This is how we are meant to be. And so when you reject that, you are going to be lonely and you're not going to be happy. So instead, you'll dye your hair pink and blue and you'll make TikTok videos insisting otherwise, which is, that's the number one indication that someone isn't happy. If someone is on TikTok saying, "I'm happy," that's the least happiest person that you'll come across.